Hey guys, how are you doing today? Welcome to Zoo View. My name is Peter. I'm the educational coordinator here as well as one of the general zookeepers. This is one of your many times returning. Welcome back. If this is one of your first times from being told by a friend to come join, welcome. This is just a way for you guys to experience some of the animals we have here while we're closed and just get your mind off your normal routine. And today we have this little beefcake and her name is Belle. And Belle is a marine toad or a cane toad, depends on who you ask. Those kind of words are interchangeable right now. There's a lot of science going behind. Are they a different species or not? Cane toad, marine toad, but this is Belle, and this is who we're going to talk about today. Now, they originally come from Central and South America, and these guys are one of the largest types of amphibians out there in the world. So amphibian is an animal like your frogs, toads, newts, or salamanders. And these guys are really unique to the whole animal kingdom because they breathe and kind of drink differently than you and I do. These guys don't actually open their mouths to drink or lap up water like a dog or a cat would. Instead, all amphibians have this kind of permeable skin. And permeable means passing through. So imagine if Belle was a sponge here. And just like your sponges at home, it kind of soaks up that water. Belle does the same thing as well as all amphibians. They actually drink through their skin. They don't drink it like you and I do. So that's how they stay hydrated. Now, just like your sponges at home though, your sponges don't just soak up your nice sink water. Your sponges, what are their jobs? To clean your dirty dishes, to clean counters and things like that. And after that, when you wring out that sponge, it comes out as brown, gross water, right? These guys are also kind of the same way. They're not just soaking up that nice clean water. These guys are actually soaking up a lot of the pollution in our world. And these guys are what we're known as an indicator species because they help indicate to scientists how well an environment is doing or how much pollution is around there in the world. So since they drink through their skin, just like if you tasted something bad, you're not going to go back to drinking that thing. Same thing with these guys. They will move or migrate with pollution to get away from it, or sometimes if there's so much pollution, they will actually die. Now, people think pollution is just plastics and trash like that. There are many other types of pollutions out there in the world. There's air pollution from exhaust pipes and factories, but these guys, their biggest factor in pollution is actually going to be water pollution. So water pollution can be different things like acid rain, runoff from factories, pesticides, insecticides, different things that get into the ground or the water system. These guys are soaking all that up. That water pollution, as well as getting a lot of that air pollution as well. So these guys, since they are so affected, they don't want to stay around any of those bad things. So they will actually move to new areas. So that's why they help indicate to a scientist how well or clean that environment is. Right here in Pennsylvania, there's actually a tiger salamander colony that scientists were studying, and a new development of houses actually were put in a good bit of distance away from about a couple miles away. And then they went to go back to study those tiger salamanders, and they found that none of them were there, and a lot of them were actually dead. And they couldn't figure out why until they did water sample testings from the ground and realized that a lot of those ground was actually toxic because of all that runoff from miles and miles away from those townhouses, which is something really important to know because tiger salamanders will actually go into a hibernation state during the wintertime. That's where they were sucking in all those harmful chemicals which were in the ground. So right here in Pennsylvania, amphibians are a big part of scientists and what they look for in an environment. So that's how you can tell how good your environment is. Which is one of the reasons why I'm wearing gloves here. Belle, being that amphibian, anything I had on my hands, like hand sanitizer, sunscreen, lotions, we have to clean everything nowadays with heavy chemicals. All those things on my hands leave residues. And if any of those residues would get onto Belle's skin here, it would get absorbed into her bloodstream, making her very sick or even potentially killing her. And we don't want that for Belle. Now, I'm also wearing these gloves for another big reason. That's because the cane toad here is actually one of the most toxic toads in our world today. Also, if you kind of zoom in here, you might be able to see on Belle here, these two very big shoulder pad looking things behind her eyes. These two big shoulder pads are actually parietal glands. These glands will actually secrete a poison or a toxin out of them. What if it would get onto a human's skin? It would produce a red, itchy spot, very much like poison ivy or a rash. This is kind of where people would get the old wives' tale of if you touch or pick up a toad or a frog, you'll get warts. Not so much warts, but more of a rash. That's from those toxins in these glands. Now, these guys are so toxic, if a predator, like a mammal or a bird or a lizard or snake would try to eat a toad with these glands, these cane toads, it would become so toxic that if it was ingested, it could give that animal upset stomach, nausea, vomiting, and actually in large amounts can stop even a human's heart from beating. So these guys are one of the most toxic toads and frogs on our planet. And these guys, especially cane toads, are what are we known as an invasive species. So we went over a little bit about an invasive species with, oh no, we're peeing, with George and the Burmese python. If you guys tuned into that talk, we talked a little bit about an invasive species. Cane toads are an invasive species in Australia. Now remember, an invasive species means two things. One, they are not native to that area, and two, they cause harm. So these guys are an invasive species to Australia. Now they were brought there on purpose. That's because Australia had this very bad beetle and insect infestation. And people thought, and scientists thought, ooh, toads, they love insects. Let's throw some cane toads, which are quite large, they must eat a lot of food, to Australia to help them combat all those beetle issues. Well, they guessed wrong. Cane toads surprisingly don't like those certain beetles in Australia. Who knew? And the issue there is now these guys are prolific breeders, which means they like to breed a lot, and now the population has overgrown. So now Australia has still the beetle issue as well as an overgrowth of cane toads. And they are so bad that they are now out competing native amphibians as for food and land, and they are littered all over the road. They are causing harm to people's houses, roadkill, accidents, things like that. So these guys are an invasive species for that matter. Thinking that they would do a good job, but unfortunately they couldn't get them under control and started to become an outbreak and causing some issues. Now an amphibian has a very cool, especially toads and frogs, have a very cool lifestyle. They go through that metamorphosis stage. So little Belle here started off as an egg, then to a tadpole where they have a nice tail, and then eventually they lose that tail and grow these limbs, and it's what you see here today. And Belle, I guess, is one of the largest amphibians out there. And in the wild, in Central and South America, Belle will eat anything that comes across her face, a very voracious eater. They'll eat different sort of insects and small mammals, other frogs, lizards, things like that, even maybe a small bird that might cross its path. These guys will eat. Here at the zoo, we give Belle different sort of insects, like hornworms and mealworms, superworms. We'll even give them a little bit of a pinky mouse, which is a little baby mouse, so they have some calcium in them. And we always dust their food with that calcium D3 powder and make sure they do have strong bones. And here at the zoo, Belle does have a nice big pool to sit in, but we also mist her enclosure as well as herself to really give that high humidity and to make sure that she stays hydrated as well. Now, frogs and amphibians, especially toads, they do play a really important role in our ecosystem because not all toads and frogs are toxic. And a lot of them can be food for other animals, which is really important to know. Which is one of the big reasons, sorry I forgot to mention, in Australia, since they are so toxic, no animal in Australia can eat them. So that's why they kind of overgrew their stay there. So that's because nothing could eat them because of these parietal glands behind their eyes being so toxic. But there are a lot of frogs and toads that are not toxic, that are a good source of food for many things. Fish love to eat frogs. A lot of birds will eat frogs as well, and toads. So these guys are a really important role right in the middle of our food chain and web because they help eat a lot of insects to keep a lot of those populations down of insects, mosquitoes, bugs, things like that, creepy crawlies, but they also become a lot of food for other animals as well. Hold on, Belly. There we go. Now, I always like to make sure that people understand that I love when you guys go outside, go flip over rocks and go through creeks to find amphibians, really look at them up close. But just be very careful. Like I said, they do have that permeable skin, which means anything that's on your hands can get inside their body, and we don't want them to get sick. So if you do know you're going outside to look for amphibians, or you're going on a hiking trip, always make sure you have a pair of gloves with you so you can pick them up close and look. And also, you never really know which toad or frog has glands on them that can secrete any sort of toxic or poison that could be harm to you. And these guys are always a really big factor. Like I said, we want to make sure we conserve, protect, and change the future. Any sort of pollution, air, water, land pollution, it can affect these guys. So you might not think what you're dumping out can be harmful, but you never really know who's it affecting. So we want to make sure that we keep these guys around for a really long time. That's kind of what we have for Belle here. I'm going to flip it over to you guys in questions if you have any about Belle or amphibians and toads or frogs.
Peter, how much does she weigh?
She's about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, almost 2,200 grams.
Has she ever used her poison on you?
No, so Belle is part of our kind of education team here. So she always is held throughout the day, a lot of times in the reptile building, or if I take her to an outreach. So she's very used to people and being held, and she never uses those parietal glands on me or anyone else. And I know a big question we do get asked here is how can you kind of tell the difference between a frog and a toad? And a lot of times it's pretty hard to tell the difference. Toads, even though they are an amphibian and they do like water, they tend to stand a little bit more on land, just a smidge more on land. Frogs tend to be a little bit more aquatic. So frogs tend to have a little bit more webbing between their toes. They live more in water versus by water. And one of the other differences is sometimes noticeable. Toads tend to have some eyelids or things, or kind of extra protrusions over their eyes. Not always the case. Where frogs tend to have their eyes being a little bit more pushed out and protruded.
If you put Belle down, will she hop away?
She might scurry away. She'll see if she moves a little bit. She'll probably not want to move right now. But she kind of hops along. Not like, that's another big thing is frogs tend to have nice big back legs. Their kind of back leg bone structure is a little bit different. So frogs will tend to do much more of an excessive jump, where toads kind of like plop along. So as I clean up this little pea mess here, you guys have more questions, put them in our chat. We'll answer them right now. But in the meantime, like I said kind of on Wednesday, we are, there she goes, we are very close to opening, and our anticipation date is actually for next week. And I do have a piece of paper to kind of go over with everybody right now about kind of some of the guidelines and things that we're going to be going over and doing. And don't mind me, I'm just trying to read off this to make sure I get everything correct. So as of right now, the biggest question is when are we opening? Our anticipation date is June 5th, so next Friday. The biggest change right now is going to be our safari tour drive-through, or used to be on a bus. We are now doing self-drive-through with your own personal vehicle. There are strict rules and restrictions on the type of vehicle permitted in the safari field. So please check our website as well as Facebook on Monday to see what those restrictions are. We will have that posted. The reptile building, where we are in right now, as well as the museum, will remain closed. The reptile building may open when the county comes to a green phase. And myself the education coordinator, I am very happy to say, as long as our county continues to go green, we will still have summer camp. We are following DCNR and state guidelines for groups and summer camps. So families and adults, or kids, if you want to join, it's only kids, but kids, tell your parents, and parents, if you would like to bring your kids, to go on our website. And as of right now, it is underneath our education tab for summer camp. There's an application to fill out. You may submit your application and I'll get back to you. We are still currently taking payment for that. It is $175 and it runs the second or third week of August. It's all online for you guys to look at. As of right now, like I said, we are still planning to have that. If not, we will obviously go about to make sure we contact you properly to let you know we are not doing that. All right. So like I said, pay attention to our Facebook and website on Monday for any new updates about the park opening, as well as next Wednesday for another Zoo View. All right, guys? So thank you and have a good weekend.